welcome Derek Abrams to Home is Where the Dark Is.
How's it going?
Great to see you, man.
Good to see you too. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since our last meetup at ES Audio for that killer drum session, by the way, man.
That was fucking great, man. Oh, is swearing okay?
Of course.
That's fucking great. It was a good session. In fact, I think the last time I'd done any recording was with Sin. Over at Schecter was the last time I'd done any recording. That was probably 2 years prior to that. So it felt fucking great to get in the studio and really like let it happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was for Three-Headed Snake stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was a great time working with you. Our first time working together. And how did you like that spot, ES Audio?
I really liked it. I was a little apprehensive at first when I noticed that it had really low ceilings. But then as soon as I clapped my hands and like got the drums set up and started playing in there a little bit, I just knew it was going to be a thunder session. It was good.
Yeah.
Like normally rooms like that are hit or miss, but that one really like hits.
It does, yeah. It's true because sometimes when the ceilings are low, it could be a little bit dead if the room isn't treated right, and it just feels a little bit. The drums sound shorter, if that makes sense. But like you don't hear the air and the breath above the cymbals and above the kit like you do in a taller room. But yeah, that spot, I've been going there for years, and I've tracked so many different drummers there, and it's surprisingly it sounds great, and I think the sound we got from your kit in there was definitely unique, and it sounded huge, and I'm happy with that final mix. Did Sin show you that mix yet for the song?
Yeah. Oh
okay,
yeah. I got a copy of it.
Your drums sound so good.
They really do. Like, and the surprising thing for me was that is the third time that drum kit has been recorded, and nothing against the recordings that we got prior to that one. That specific session in that specific room was the best that kit's ever sounded on tape.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, well, I say tape just as like as a general term, but yeah, I mean, it sounded fucking amazing, and I don't want to. It's hard to say if it's just the drums or combination of everything, but yeah, everything about that session was just fucking magic. So. We did capture a really good session, so I'm fucking thrilled. Same,
yeah, and your kit is special. It has such a massive sound, like on its own, just in any space. I'm sure it sounds killer, but the way we captured it and what I did in the mix was like it sounded so good as is. Like because usually with that type of metal, I either use 100% samples or I blend samples with the acoustic kit, but with that track I don't think I sampled anything. I think it might have done a little bit of kick, but all your toms are natural, snares natural. I might have blended in a tiny bit, but I wanted to specifically leave those toms natural because they just sounded so fucking huge and fat, and
they really did the thing, they fucking sounded good. Yeah, it's the drums are made of oak, which normally, like, oak is really good for live, and a lot of people kind of shy away from it. They shy away from the real dense hardwoods in the studio until I think it was when Tama introduced the Birch Babinga series, because Babinga is a really hard, like, African hardwood.
Yeah.
And when those drums hit the scene, everyone was so amazed with how much low end came out of those drums that people started dragging stuff like that into the studio finally, because it was
dragging,
like there was like get it in here, because like I remember when I want to say it was probably like the not early 90s, but like I know I'm dating myself a little bit here, but the later 90s was when that stuff came out, and everyone went crazy because they're like, listen to the low end of these drums. And it's fucking true. I mean, the drums themselves have crazy low end, and then the company started really branching out and using things like walnut. And God, what was this one kit that came out of Brazil that was made out of? I don't even know if I pronounce it right. It's imbuia is the name of the wood. They had to mill parts of it with a laser lathe just to get some of the clearances correctly, because the wood is so dense. Damn. Yeah. I mean, it makes an amazing guitar, but yeah, you wouldn't think it would make a great drum, but man, it does. It really does.
Isn't it crazy how much of a difference like all the different woods make the sound of the kit. Like it's insane. Like how vast of a spectrum of tone you can get just from the different wood.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having been playing drums and been around it for as long as I have, which is a long time now, but just kind of seeing the fads and then seeing some of the actual like innovations that have come out that really have changed things. Just being I quote unquote on the ground floor, just having been there at the right place at the right time, seeing these things coming out and getting to play with it and figuring out if it does or doesn't work has been a lot of fun. But like I would say like the big thing for me that was awesome was just to see that like the big drum companies at the time were like really getting as experimental as the guitar shops were at the same time. And it makes sense too, because like they're all interconnected. It's like all musicians. We're all like, all of us know someone and we all know someone else. So it's the same thing in the instrument world, like instrument builders such as Schecter Guitars. I mean, everybody at Schecter Guitars knows somebody that, you know, either half the staff was either at like Fender at one point, or they worked with Jackson, or whatever guitar companies are around town. We all know each other, and it's a small community, and we whether we like it or not, we steal each other's ideas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's called collaboration, right? You know,
It is. That's the word. Yeah. So what's your, personally, like right now at this point in your career, what is your favorite type of wood for a drum kit?
Vintage
wood?
Yeah.
Any vintage wood?
Almost any vintage wood. Some of the old made in Japan maple drum kits are great. And the only thing that really kind of detracts from the vintage maple stuff from Japan is that the features, as I say, features like the hardware, is not quite what it was like, say, like 1960s Ludwig or Premier. Like anything United States and European made from the 1970s and earlier is really starting to like, it's starting to catch my ear. In a guy I know. Well, I don't really know him because I just kind of ran into him and we struck up this awesome conversation. And what he was telling me was that, take for instance, like the Martin Guitar Company, they'll take their brand new guitars that they just finished and they'll put them into a studio treated room, and then they'll shoot frequencies through there to quote unquote age the wood. So it gets the wood is saturated with the vibrations, so it settles.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. It was fascinating when we talked about it, and I looked into it, and it is true that they treat their guitars with this. It's, what do they call it? It's got a cool name like sound reinforcement aging process or something like that. But I know Martin does it, Taylor does it, and Ibanez does it now. Yamaha's been doing it for a long time. But what this guy was telling me is, like, if you think about it, these guitars are trying to sound like they're 30, 40, 50 years old, when now, if you think about it, no one did that to the drums that are 40, 50 years old, but now they are 40, 50 years old, and they're treated like that. Yeah. And I really have, like, after we talked about that, like, I really started listening to older drums, like an old 1940s Slingerland snare drum that was, you know, was steam bent in the, you know, back in the 1940s, and it's been played on consistently since. Now it's got the vibrations and it's really settled, if you will, and it's just, they just sound better. You can take a brand new maple snare drum made the same way and put them both together. They're going to sound similar, but this one's going to record, the one that's vintage is going to record just a little bit better for whatever magic reason that is, with sound frequencies and the vibrations. It just, they, like, everything that I've messed with vintage lately has sounded so much better, and they've always got an awesome story too, which to me, yeah. I love that, you know, like, there was a drum shop that I worked at for a long time that we used to specialize in vintage restoration, and everybody that brought something in had some cool story with the drums. Like, oh, these belong to my uncle, and he played in this band, and the band really didn't take off, but then he gave it to me, and then I practiced on it, and then decided I wanted something bigger, and blah, blah, blah. Or this was my dad's, and he passed away. None of us know how to play drums, and we want someone who does play drums to blah, blah, blah. It's always a cool, like, sometimes endearing, sometimes sad, sometimes really funny stories that always come with these instruments, and that I think that gives them more character in a I guess in a weird spiritual sense.
For sure.
That like you sit down with a drum that's got more history. Like it's not, like guitars seem to have their own soul. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like yeah,
Especially acoustics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I've seen some dudes sit down and play acoustic guitars that were like, this one is 50 years old. This one's 100 years old, and you just playing it and hearing it playing. For like lack of a better term, it almost sounds like an old man telling a story.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You can hear every like creak and crack in the wood, and as it sounds so different compared to obviously like a brand new Martin compared to an old Martin. It's just like you can hear the history and the sweat and tears of all the musicians that played it, and every strum of the chord of those old guitars. It's just amazing. But so okay, so you like vintage kits.
Yeah.
So, okay, we talked about it a little bit, but so from your experience, it seems that the vintage kits, since obviously they've had more time to be played and they've been broken in and they have history to them. So from your experience, they just sound more pleasing when you're in the studio or playing live, just like because it has all that history and has all those notes in the wood, like
Yeah. I would say the other thing that I would say about it is that they're almost a little more user friendly because you're going to get what you want out of them a lot sooner. Like say you want to get this sound out of it, just if there's drum heads that are already on said drum, if you want to get like a certain sound out of it, it's going to be a lot easier to just kind of tweak the tuning as opposed to like having to kind of reinvent the wheel. Like I suffered that when I went into a recording studio a long time ago to record some stuff with some friends, and they were really kind of wanting to get that John Bonham sound, and the studio engineer said something really cool that it was really cool and funny and kind of insulting at the same time, but I got it, where it was like, he's like, hey, look, it's cool if you guys want to get the John Bonham sound, but if you really want to get that sound, you're just gonna have to dig him up. Because you're no matter what we do, we're not going to get it. They captured lightning in a bottle, and as good as you may be, because we I don't want to toot my own horn, but it's like I was raised in a Led Zeppelin house, and like John Bonham and making those sounds is something that I've always been trying to replicate, just because I've loved it. I mean, what drummer doesn't love that sound? But when we sat down, I was like, oh, I'm going to get it, and then he basically sat down and explained to me how we're not going to get it, but we're going to reinvent the wheel to try and get that sound. And I went in there with a brand new drum kit that I'd had, like literally I got 3 months prior to that, and we sat down with it, and don't get me wrong, it sounded fucking awesome in the room, but it didn't sound like what we were looking for. And that's like kind of where I realized, like, I kind of got that hard lesson in the studio where it was like, if you're going to try to get these sounds, don't try to get those sounds out of said drum set. Just get the drums that you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No matter what you got to do, if you want that sound, just get that sound.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, but
it's really fucking hard.
It's a hard lesson to learn for sure. Yeah. I've dealt with that so much, and in my career in the studio, just not with drums, of course, but with all instruments, all types of performances, all types of musicians. Like, that's the thing. It's like what's beautiful about all these iconic sounds that we've learned to love over the years, and the records that we hold dear and everything that we reference, is like most of them, they didn't go in being like, this is the very specific sound that we're going to take ages to find. It's just like they just brought in their kit and they played and they captured it, and it turned out to be magical, and everyone loves it and tries to replicate it. But the fact of the matter is, I feel that like true artists and musicians that have years of experience and that know who they are as musicians and artists, they just have their favorite drum set or their favorite guitar and their favorite gear, and they develop their tone, they develop their style, and then they just go in the studio and record it. And it's great, and it is what it is. They're not trying to sound like someone else. You know what I mean? They're just they're just doing what they do and moving on to the next song. You know,
Right.
I get so like, I've had sessions where it's a bit of a struggle because the artist is so fixated on sounding like XYZ person. I understand that because we're all influenced by, you know, our
100%.
Our heroes, our musical heroes, and we want to, you know, we're influenced by them and we want to do things similar. But I found that the artists that translate the best in the studio from microphone to the speakers, they just show up and they're confident in who they are with their gear, with their voice, with their songs, and they just do it and it sounds great. Regardless of, it doesn't matter like, oh, well, we didn't use this specific mic or we didn't use this specific amp. It's like those things matter, but it's not like it's not what makes the artist, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's all these little things add up like in the process, but that drum tone, he probably could have gone in and played like any kit and it would have sounded killer. You know what I mean?
Honestly, I agree with you. He probably could have went in there and played any kit of any dimensions or anything like that, and it still would have sounded great. Because I mean, it's I know I use the term liberally all the time, but like it's like catching lightning in a bottle, and like good recordings are definitely like that. Like some of my favorite recordings are garbage. You know, like
Me too.
Don't sound. I mean, like to standards today, they're shit. But when you press play, it's just fucking magic.
Yeah, because it brings you back to that time when you first heard it and you're impacted by it. Mm-hmm. Dude, exactly what you said. Most of my favorite records from when I was growing up in my childhood, like I go back and I listen to them, like, ooh, it's some of them are like they're extremely like fatiguing and harsh. But back then it was exciting. It was cool because it was new. It was like, whoa, what the hell are these sounds? Never heard a guitar sound like that. Never heard drums sound like that. Never heard vocals sound like that. But yeah, now, you know, and like you said, in today's standards, it's probably shit. Definitely. But definitely. But I mean, we still go back and listen to those records for a reason. It's not because, it's because this mix and master and performance is perfect. It's because it captured a mood that we resonated with at the time. Yeah, that was different, and that's all that matters. I think that's the main point of what I was trying to say before. Is like, you are who you are as an artist, and go in and record and let it be what it is. And I think when people start to they get too deep into the minutia, into like the little details of the process, and I think that's good, like for a certain amount of time, because you know we're all music nerds and audio nerds, and that stuff is fun to spend time on. But I think there's once you get to a certain point, you just have to let things be what they are. You know what I mean? Yeah,
100%. So, and kind of touching on that topic too, I think there's like what you were saying, like musicians and players out there that have been doing it for a while, and they you know, they walk in, they don't necessarily, they're not looking to have someone else's sound, they're just going to go in and do it how they're feeling it. And I think it's taken me like the last I don't know, the last 35 years of being a musician and whatnot to slowly and gradually more and more just stop giving a fuck about, you know, how I want it to sound and just let it fucking be what it's going to be. It might sound like shit, who cares? But you know, it's an idea, and we're going for it. Yeah. So it, you know, sometimes you have to do the proverbial, like, God, there's an old band manager that was like, we're just going to throw it at the wall and see what sticks. Used to say that shit all the time, and like, and I got so sick of hearing it. But then now, like, thinking back on it, like, Bill Berry, if you hear this, I love you and still hate you. But but yeah, he used to say that shit all the time, and I would get so sick of it. Like, Bill, knock it off. I know you're going to say that shit, and half the time you'll throw it at the wall and nothing sticks because, you know, he was still trying to figure things out just like we were at the time. But yeah, like, the more and more I've gotten older, it's the more and more I've just started to really not give a fuck. If something fucking turns my crank, blows my whistle, whatever it is, I'm gonna explore that stuff. And it's and especially like being in a studio when you have access to all that equipment that you can really like experiment with sound, as opposed to, you know, like in a rehearsal space where you're working with music and like say song structure, because I used to always like argue with guitar players in the room, like, well, my tone's not quite right. Well, look at the room that we're in. It's not ever going to be right. I think my drums sound like buckets in this room. We're working on getting the structure together. When we get into the studio, we're going to make it sound fucking killer. But yeah, like, it's just, I think the less you give a fuck, the better chance you have at capturing that lightning, because like,
Absolutely.
yeah, because once you get into the studio and you don't care, or not that you don't care, but if you don't have any expectations, then it's a lot easier to be blown away by whatever it is that you come up with, because of the excitement and the feelings you have towards it. So yeah, I think definitely not giving a fuck is one of those things I need to work on myself a lot more too. But
it's a difficult part of what we do for sure, because
absolutely
we're so overly, well, at least speaking for myself, like I'm very over analytical and extremely hard on myself and overly critical, because that's just part of like what I do.
I don't know any musician that's not like that.
I know some that are I don't know. I've known some that are very, very critical and very hard on themselves, but I've also known people that are just like, whatever, let's just do it. I don't care. I just want to, there's some people that they just want to play shows. They just want to make albums. They just want to keep going and doing like quantity over quality. There's some people I've known like that, but I'm more quality over quantity. Yeah, I think it's about realistic expectations, and that's something that I think it takes certain people a longer time to realize.
Yeah.
As a musician in the music industry, because, you know, I made a post about this not too long ago, but yeah, it's I can't tell you how many artists I've worked with that, you know, you do the best you can to explain what's going to happen when you go into the studio, but when they finally hear themselves, like maybe it's their first time in a pro studio, or maybe it isn't, but when they finally hear how they sound coming through the speakers, like under a microscope, it freaks them out, because a lot of them, they want to sound like their favorite band, but they realize they don't. So what do you do now? It's like, well, you just have to lean into your strengths and what you're good at and just roll with that. But I think, well, I know from experience, like some artists just have a hard time accepting that, accepting their strengths and who they are as an artist, because they're so dead set on sounding like something else, when all you really have to do is find out who you are. And then that will probably be really good. And if it isn't, you just work on it over time, and then it becomes good. But yeah, that's a major issue for sure.
I and especially, someone who's worked with a ton of different projects and whatnot, you've seen a ton of different people. Like I myself, I don't have that big of a resume. I sometimes I joke about I've been fired from more bands than I've actually been in, which is sort of true. It's pretty equal, but like, I mean, I can see that where, you get a lot of different people into the room and it might be their first time. And I remember the first time I heard myself recorded, I was really excited about it.
That's good.
And then I was really excited about it. And then I started having that flood of feelings of like, no, I don't sound anything like I thought I sounded like, or all those emotions kind of flooded in. And then that was kind of the moment where you just kind of have to, just go with it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not this person. You're not this person. You're not going to sound like this person because you physically can't.
Right.
I forget the scientist. In fact, I was watching this insane movie last night about how two of the same particles can't exist in the same dimension.
Two of the same particles can't exist in the same dimension.
Yeah, okay. and it was this wild concept, and I watching this movie, I was just kind of like totally like cycled thoughts, like, what about this or what about this? But yeah, it was very interesting. Basically what it was this. There was a rift in time, and two dimensions of the same people ended up in the same dimension at the same time. Were you watching
Interstellar or something?
Kind of. It was a total shit B movie on one of the like horror movie streaming platforms that I subscribe to, and and some of them are great, and some of them are like, you definitely know that this was like a pet project for someone because the editing and audio isn't that great, but the story's cool, you know, like, and I love movies like that, but like this one was about this, yeah, basically it was like this group of friends had an experiment that they did, and then they ended up in the same dimension as the same dimension as another dimension, but they were identical.
Oh, like parallel universe.
Parallel universe type thing, but as all four of these same people, their counterparts and themselves started deteriorating and dying because they can't be in the same place at the same time. And I totally forget where I was taking this as a parallel to recording, but it was interesting. But no, like you kind of the same thing where like if you want to sound like somebody else, you can't because they can't exist at the same time. And you know what good is that? Because like you can also run that into like the thought of like case in point, Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah,
everybody loves to hate them, and it's fine. And I have my opinions about why it is that it's working against them, and I'll flatly say out that I think it's one of those things that like it should have been a non-issue right off the bat, because everybody says, well, they sound just like Led Zeppelin. Yeah, they do. And it would have been way easier had they said what I just said. Like, you guys sound like just like Led Zeppelin. Yep. Great. We're going to write more music. Yeah. I hope you like it because we do too. Yeah. You know, but the pushback and whatnot about how they like, I don't even know if this is true or not. Someone in the band had said that they'd never heard of Led Zeppelin or all that.
Come on.
Yeah. Like, all right, I can't say that for certain, but I have heard that story. So that I'm definitely pushing a rumor right there. But at the same time, like I read an article. I think it was Revolver or Spin or some rock tabloid. Had an interview with their lead singer, and he admit like he wouldn't address it and said, I think we just need to move on from this, and I'm sick and tired of talking about it. Well, it's like if you act like that, people are still going to poke you about it.
I think that's bringing up that band is a great point because of what we just talked about. Like, you know, even if you could replicate another artist, like, why do you want to do that? Like, they already exist. They're already doing their thing. There's something special about each individual person that you should want to find out who you are, like what your truth is as a musician, and then put that out into the world. But I guess, you know, there's people that just love like cover bands and all that, which is cool. Cover bands are cool, but there's people that will flock to those kinds of bands, and that's fine. It's just, to me, it just seems like such a waste, you know, especially when you're such a talented musician. Like, those dudes seem super talented, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody knows who's a musician that like Led Zeppelin's music is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So you really have to be an accomplished player in order to pull that sound off and to pull that style off. It's not, I mean, it's an old style, but old style doesn't necessarily mean easy.
Right.
Because, I mean, if that was the case, everybody'd be playing fucking classical music.
True.
You know what I mean?
That's the hardest music, for sure.
It's the hardest music. You have to have a guy standing in front of everybody telling them how to do it, because what they're looking at is so fucking complicated. They're like, or, you know, whatever the fuck it is that they're playing. Yeah. They have to have a conductor going quiet, loud, fast, slow. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, when I was coming up as a youngster, and the concert bands and the jazz bands and the symphonic bands in school, which I don't know if there are anymore, but when I was coming up in that, we always had a conductor, and I loved it. Like, I wish all bands had a conductor. I really do. In fact, to be brutally honest, one of my favorite bands that I ever played in back in the day, the lead singer was basically the conductor of the whole band as well. He wrote all the lyrics, all the guitar parts, and all the drum parts in the band. The band's name was Dodd, and the lead singer is Dodd. It was all him. There was virtually zero, maybe 0.001% collaboration between him and the lead guitar player in the band, because he got to play his own solos. and that was it. And he even conducted on stage. Have you ever worked with anybody like that?
Where they conduct on stage?
Where like it was interesting because like he would have these moves that he would do on stage, like he would tilt his head, or he would put his arm down, or he had this other kind of signature. It was almost like a Prince move. And oddly enough, this was a great metal band that I loved playing in this metal band, but he would do this move where he would kind of step over and then slide his foot. And then as soon as his feet came together was when the next part of the song would start. So he was directing like breaks, how long and short they were. It was really interesting. And he never once spoke to the audience on stage.
So those moves were they cues for the band, or were they just synchronized with the band?
They were cues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we were all like, he used to always say it, pay attention, but don't pay attention. Like, don't be staring at me, but make sure I'm in view.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool.
It was really interesting.
How long were you in that band?
I was in that band for almost 5 years. I was with them for almost 5 years. The first 3 years I was in the band, we did a lot of shows, and we did a lot of like regional type touring stuff, and we had a really good fan base, and we were building a lot of hype. And then after we had, I think it was 5 label showcases. We had 5 label showcases in 3 months. And every single one of those labels came back with, we're not interested, or we do want to work with you, but we don't want to use anything that you've got recorded right now. We want to get back into the studio and re-record everything. And and it just seemed like a whole lot of bullshit. That was like, we already have the record recorded. It's done. It's mixed. It's mastered. All you got to do is pick it up, get us distribution. And like, we already had a plan, and Dodd already had a plan, and people would put these deals in front of him, and some of them were actually okay. And that was where I think things kind of got there was a little bit of malaise in the band, where it was like every deal that comes to him, he's just pushing it away. So it was almost like he seemed like he was almost gun shy of signing the wrong deal, that he wasn't going to sign any deal. And I get it. I mean, it's fucking tough. I mean, sometimes you got to really like weigh it out. Like, this part of the deal totally sucks, but this part of the deal is incredible. So yeah, and having conversations and meetings with everybody about what we wanted to do and blah, blah, blah. None of the labels that we had talked to were going to be able to do that for us. So things just kind of, the hype started, and then it just kind of slowly started to fizzle, which happens. I mean, however many bands you've been in, I'm sure you've seen that a couple times yourself.
Yeah.
Where like, you've got a great thing going here, but just you're ready to do the next thing. And
yeah, the momentum is very important. I was talking to a friend about this, actually. It's like, I've seen a lot of bands where they start, they're really good, they play a bunch of shows, they develop a lot of hype, and things are growing really well, but for some reason the momentum stops, and then it's like you have to start over, because and I've seen, it's just too bad, because there's bands with so much potential that are so talented, but for whatever reason, like the band leader, doesn't want to continue the momentum for who knows what reason, but there's so many reasons that and yeah, it just seems like a lot of bands have not gotten to the next level, or not gotten a deal, or not continued their career because of the lost momentum there. It's a big deal, but it's hard to sustain that. It really is, because you have to basically turn the band into your full-time job, even though you're probably not making money or enough money. You're losing money, and you have to have your normal job and do the band. But if you don't put 100% into the band, then you won't continue the momentum, and it's like, it's really difficult.
It has to be one of the most difficult things that I've ever tried to do in my entire life is honestly starting a band. And I honestly don't know if it's more difficult for drummers to start a band than it is for anybody else. But I guess honestly, I haven't really had good conversations with anybody about it, other than just in passing, like, do you know anybody, or just the networking that you start to do to try to start a band. But every drummer that I know that's wanted to start a band has always really struggled just to get players, just to come together and jam, which I don't know. I mean, as a guitar player, musician yourself, like, have you ever had that problem too? I mean, honestly,
Starting a band?
just getting people together.
Yeah. I think it depends on where you are in the stage of your career, because obviously the longer you do it, the more people you meet and the bigger network you have. So like right now, it would be easy to start a band because I know so many people in the industry and so many different musicians. But when I was first starting, it's very difficult because you're there's people available, but also important thing is you have to develop relationships with these people and know what they bring to the table and know what kind of a person they are, know their skill level. So there might be people available, but maybe they won't work for the project for a number of reasons. But it was very difficult in the beginning of my career. And yeah, I went through all kinds of different bands and members. And the reason, like the hardest thing is it's just like a relationship or a marriage with 4 people. 3 or 4 people. It's extremely difficult to make it work long term. So yeah, but it is difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And most of the drummers that I know, it's been like, you guys like getting 2 drummers into the same room with 2 drum sets. I've never had a problem with that one, but like just talking with other, like a bass player and a guitar player, like, can you guys come and jam sometime? And I don't know if it's like a nervousness thing. I'm sure there's some emotions involved with that, but like, I've always had the guys, like a lot of guys will say, like, yeah, I'm totally down to jam. And then when push comes to shove, there never ends up being a day where we can get together, or like something happens with the schedule, and then, you know, all kinds of time goes by. And I mean, myself being on the road a lot too, excuse me, a lot of times being on the road is a hindrance for a lot of people, because like sometimes I'm gone for 6-8 weeks at a time, and that, you know, can be a total turnoff. But at the same time, it's like, as a musician, anytime you get a chance to jam, I mean, it's hard to say no. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think it just depends on, you know, what your goals are. If you're the type of person that, you know, wants to be playing in bands and wants to be jamming with people and getting to know the characteristics and dynamics of different musicians, I think it's great to start jamming with a lot of people, so you can decide, okay, I would like to start a band with this guy, and then because it's really, really, really risky just going into, you know, it's just like the auditioning process. It's like you're vetting people, like figuring out like, okay, well, yeah, I could jam with this person, but long term, would it work? Are we lining up? Do we have the same goals? Do we have the same musical tastes, or similar enough to make it work? Because if you just jump into something with people that it seems to work fine now, but then long term, like getting into the months of it, it's like, you know, it just, I think the longer you wait to figure out if it's the right person, the better. But yeah, like, and what you were talking to me about earlier before we started up, I think this would be a great segue into that. So you're looking to start a new project. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I have been kicking around the idea of putting together a trio or quartet of either guitar player, bass player, drummer, with or without vocals. As of right now, I'm not really too worried about it. If there was someone that had a voice that fit the project, I mean, I know a few singers that I like working with, and I know a few guitar players that I like working with, and there's a couple bass players that I absolutely love working with. But what I'm really looking for, I'm looking for a guitar player who is really, really into Southern rock and has more of that slide guitar, maybe even Nashville sound, if you will. I'd like to find someone who likes to play their guitar with that old twang sound. Maybe Chet Atkins, or damn it, I can't remember his name, but he played the guitar with Johnny Cash forever.
Shoot.
Yeah, I know, right? He's the thankless guy that deserves so much fucking credit. But you know, players like that, I'm looking for a guitar player that kind of runs that that end of the spectrum with guitar. Maybe, I mean, Jerry Reed's a pretty tall order because that guy was such a badass with the guitar. But if anybody out there, if you want to play like that in a stoner rock band and be really loud and have lots of feedback,
yes,
talk to me about this. I'm looking for someone to do that. The idea kind of came up years ago when I was listening to. I was working at the School of Rock in Minnesota, which, by the way, I will plug that company till the day I die. If there was a school program like that when I was a kid, they'd had to fucking chase me out at the end of the night with a stick. I mean, there's some really great bands that have come out of out of that program. And but I was working at the School of Rock, and I was listening to a lot of what my students were listening to, because at that time I was 34 years old. And it was the first time that I was sitting and listening to what, a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old was listening to, and I felt so out of touch. And it was one of those weird moments where I was like, holy shit, dude, you are old. But I'm listening to them, and I'm like, why doesn't anybody like Black Sabbath anymore?
Well, what kind of stuff were they listening to?
It was mostly it was during that whole push of like indie bands. Bands like Cage the Elephant and I'm trying to think of some other ones. Well, of course, this was also at the same time that Kelly Clarkson had just released her big record. So This was like 2008, 2009, 2012 era. So like the bands that were very popular with teens at that time were the ones that they were listening to. And it was a big departure from the metal scene. The metal scene was really happening, but then, I noticed that there was the not metal kids, and then there was metal kids.
Right. Yeah.
There was no in between. And when I, like me being a product of the 1990s, there was such a gray area because of all the bands that were around, like Nirvana and Alice in Chains. There was that huge gray area where it went, you had death metal and you had pop.
Yeah.
And then everything in between there was almost intermingling with each other.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a really cool time during music. But at the same time, just after that, when I was hitting my 30s, it was a weird thing for me. Like, why doesn't anybody like Black Sabbath anymore? Let's fucking start a band that sounds like, I don't know, Rage Against the Machine and the Queens of the Stone Age, and Black Sabbath had a baby.
That's interesting. That'd be killer.
Had a baby in Arkansas. You know what I like? And there's tons of bands out there that are like that once I mentioned those words, and I firmly believe that once you mention something out into the universe, it begins to exist to you if you have never thought of it. But like I mentioned this, and then some friends of mine were like, well, have you heard of this band? Have you heard of this band? It's like a specific band that really caught my attention was a band called Goat Snake. You ever heard of them?
No.
They're fucking fantastic. It's as dark and kind of not quite as southern sounding as I want to go. I'd like to actually incorporate like slide guitar and banjo.
Yes.
Like, it sounds weird in my head, and it might even sound weird when we get together and like whoever guitar player is out there that wants to do this. It might sound weird. It might sound like shit. I don't know, but I want to find out.
Weird's a good thing, though.
This is true.
I mean, in this industry now, you have to really be weird and stand out to like have any chance, or else just get lost in the sea of millions of bands that start every day.
Right. I mean, what was it? A good friend of mine, Whitney Ty, was telling me that it's gotten to the point now where I think it's 80,000 songs are released every day.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
80,000. Like I still can't wrap my head around that number.
I don't think I'll ever listen to 80,000 songs in my entire life.
I think it's impossible. I think it's, if you were to listen to one song every day,
you'd have to be listening to music all day, every day.
It would take 80,000 days to listen to one day's worth of releases.
No,
it's impossible. And like I think it's incredible that we have 80,000 songs coming out every day, but there is some truth behind the term oversaturation.
So true.
Yeah, and I think that I think that goes to music and movies specifically, and like streaming services. Just to kind of touch on that topic of like, you've got 80,000 songs coming out a day. It makes it really hard for, things that might not, that might be absolutely amazing, but they're not going to be unless people can hear them. And there's so much that just kind of gets washed out the door, or what would the term be? It kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah,
for
sure. Yeah, it's definitely an issue, and I think that's why a lot of artists, they think like, oh well, I'm gonna pay for streams, I'm gonna pay to get on playlists, I'm gonna pay for views, and it's like that's not the answer. But I mean, it's just that's why I was saying earlier, you really have to be different, because to break through that ceiling of, here's like the 80,000 streams a day, and then to break through those to be noticed is very, very challenging. So I think the more weird and unique you are, the better.
Yeah, I mean it's that's kind of been the case forever. Like, I mean, fuck it, I don't. Would it have worked as well for David Bowie had he not gone on stage and said he was a fucking alien? You know what I mean? Like, or with the makeup and whatnot. Yeah, you have to go out there and fucking do that in order to get noticed nowadays. But I love it as a spectator, and I love it as a tech too. Like, I do a lot of tech work in the industry, and it's kind of fun to be working with bands and like standing on the side of the stage. It's kind of funny too, because like sometimes I feel like a crotchety old fart when I'm standing, like either working a playback machine or I'm sitting behind a drum set teching for somebody, and I'll kind of look up and be like, man, that's a lot of shit to do just for one gig.
Yeah,
that's like all the makeup and all everything that goes into just the one show. It's like, that's a lot of shit, and I love it, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, to be truly honest. Like, the music industry and entertainment industry in itself is just one of those things that's like, you're either cut out for it or you're not. And if you think you are, that's great, but you have to give yourself at least 6 months of trying all of it before you really know that if it's something that you want to fucking do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How old were you when you got started? Or how old were you? 15, like when they're like, you were like, this is fucking it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I played my first show. I played at the first like cool show was I was 16, and I played at the Key Club with my high school band. Nice. And I thought, I was like, this is amazing, like I made it, and it's silly, but like that was a big deal for me, because like rest in peace Key Club, but I loved that place, and I saw so many bands there, and I was like, we get to play, and it was cool. But yeah, I got started, I started with piano, then I discovered guitar, then I discovered like heavy, like I discovered Green Day, and then I discovered Korn, and then that was it. That's what changed everything for me. But yeah, man, I started younger, and I knew from a young age that music was gonna be my thing. Didn't know exactly where I'd end up, but I know it'd be in the music industry somehow. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure what you just said about teching and like so much preparation for some of these shows, and even the show that we just played the other night with Burton, like and we're a very low maintenance band, but just to do those simple shows is just an all day process. It's so much fucking work, as you know, and
the rehearsals that lead up to it are like that. You had to take at least 4 to 6 hours at least of rehearsal time, and I would say at minimum,
Well, I mean, if it's your first show in a long time, you got to go back in the woodshedding and get dust off the cobwebs, and we hadn't played in 2 years, and we did like 5 rehearsals leading up to the show. But people understand, like, it's not just the show that is where all the effort. It's leading up to the show. It's the rehearsing. It's extremely expensive to like the rehearsing and the gear and the transportation and the merch. It's like it's so much work to do one show. And
it's funny too, because it almost seems like when you're actually on stage playing the show is such a small part of it, but it's the best part of it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully, but it's the best part of it because it's what everything was leading up to. It's the culmination of all that work, and then once it's all over with, there's like this sigh of relief, and there's a sigh of relief, and I'm trying to think, just general calm afterwards, because like while you're on stage, like I don't know. Well, I mean, I can say from the past, like just even from jazz band performances in high school, there was this amount of nervousness and excitement that would come up before you get on stage, and then once you finally sit down and you're playing the set, that's just as nerve-wracking, because you know you're wanting to put on your best performance of, like, you've got all this stuff going on in your head, like you're remembering songs, remembering how to play songs, remember I need to do this little part right here at this certain part that we talked about in rehearsal. Don't forget to do that. You know, you got all these things going on in your head. So it's fucking chaos the whole time. And then when it's finally over with, you're like, oh, I hope people like that.
There's so much going on. There's so much to manage mentally and emotionally with this stuff. And I think, and you know, for me, I think the most relaxing part of it for me is just is playing the set, because everything leading up to it's like go, stop, play, then unload, go. It's like that's the relaxing part for me, you know, is because it's just like finally everything's done. I'm just gonna do my thing. I'm gonna feel it out. I'm gonna enjoy myself, you know, get in the mood and just chill. And it's really relaxing for me. It hasn't always been that way, because when I was younger, I would get a bit more nervous, but now it's like, as you know, once you get to a certain point, it's just muscle memory, and you can chill and relax and just fucking enjoy yourself, and hopefully, you know, not make mistakes. But we all make mistakes here and there, and that's not a problem, you know, as long as you start and end the song at the right spot.
And I like with some of the bands that I played with in the past, like I used to do a lot of country cover band work before I moved out to LA, and a lot of times, like, same thing, but like when you were mentioning mistakes, at one point when I was playing in a country western cover band known as Eagle River, it got to the point where I would look forward to people making mistakes on stage, because then it actually gave us something to recover from, because we were playing 4 and 5 nights a week, 3 hours a night, and it was mostly the same set every night. So like there was a little bit of like getting kind of bored with the songs themselves, and then if somebody would fuck up, it would be like, kick ass, now we got to recover from this. And luckily, you know, being that all of us were good players in that band, we were able to recover from these things, and then we started looking forward to them. And sometimes it would be our lead singer would turn around and just make note on stage, like, oh, we're going to skip the solo section in this song, but we're going to go through and move it to this part. So he would like make hand signals on stage, like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but like I didn't notice this until I started playing in this band, but a lot of Nashville bands are like that, where there'll be one guy on stage making these hand signals. And I didn't know this until I learned the Nashville numbers system. Do you work with that at all?
No, I don't know.
If you get a chance, I'll send it to you. There's a great article. I think it was Johnny Rabb that wrote it in Modern Drummer, that kind of laid out how the Nashville numbers systems work.
Okay.
And it's brilliant. What it is you've got all these numbers that you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are a key.
Okay.
So the song is in this key. We say it's number 2, and if there's ever going to be a chord change or a key change in the song, whoever it's generally, I've noticed this with most of the bigger country western bands. Like did an opening slot for Miranda Lambert years ago, and she has an acoustic player in the band, and that's the guy that if there's ever going to be any changes made, or if he notices a mistake, or if he notices, say, like, and I was talking with him beforehand, if he notices that, say, Miranda's voice is starting to fatigue, he'll bring everyone down a half step.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's wild communication on stage. But our singer in that band would turn around and like make these numbers because everybody in the band knew it. I don't have to worry about it as a drummer. Like I don't care if you're gonna go, you're gonna go from E flat to this. You know, it doesn't.
You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'll follow. I got you. You know.
That's killer. I mean, I've heard that term before, but I've never known what it was. But that's extremely convenient. That makes perfect sense. Like just the fact that, because I love bands that like improv and kind of jam on stage and are, you know, kind of do random shit.
Yeah,
I love when bands do that. So it's cool that it's basically like a cueing system for the band. So like, okay, we're gonna change a key here, we're gonna slow down here, we're gonna just a communication, on stage communication system.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
It's an on stage communication system, and it's also a really great way to, if you're like doing a lot of studio work. And so you've got multiple sessions in one day with multiple bands. You can go through and you can write out your own cheat sheets like that, just writing down the numbers. And then if there's a specific fill at the end of said measure, you just kind of pencil that in there if it has to syncopate. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's super simple. When I find that article, I'll send it to you. It's
that'd be great.
Yeah, it's an old modern drummer issue, and I'm pretty sure it was Johnny Rabb that wrote that, because Johnny Rabb's a fucking Nashville legend. Like he holds like the record for the most sessions with the most bands in one day. And like like, and in Nashville it's a fucking lot of bands.
Yeah, I've always wanted to, you know, do a session down there, because, you know, just working with those kinds of musicians, like I really enjoy just raw like acoustic music. I'm not really a country fan, but I like acoustic music, like super vulnerable raw acoustic music. Like and I know she's considered country, but the newest Casey Musgraves album is an absolute masterpiece in my opinion. Like it doesn't, to me, when I hear it, I don't hear country, because this new album, it's more personal and vulnerable, and she doesn't talk about, they're not country lyrics in whatsoever, but they're
trucks and mama.
Yeah. But the guitar playing and the singing is just so good, and I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've always like, maybe one day I'll try and get down to Nashville and do a session somehow. But you know, yeah, that's cool that you got to, you know, and you played all kinds of different music.
Yeah, I've played the weirdest gig I ever did with a band was a band called Maylong. And they were out of the Twin Cities, where I'm originally from, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Maylong is a Tibetan pop rock band.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the out of all the unique music styles that I've ever worked with in a band was Tibetan pop rock, and I went into it super open-minded and super nervous, because like I do know that most Asian scale structures are pentatonic, and a lot of times it's a 5-note pattern, which puts everything in 5/4. And as a drummer, 5/4 is not the easiest one to groove to. You know?
I know, but I love fucked up. I love fucked up time signatures.
Absolutely. If you can take an odd time signature and make it danceable, you have fucking mastered that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, one of my favorite guys that I work with, Marco Miniman, is he's that guy. He like on their newest record, the Aristocrats put out, called Duck. There's a song on there called Where's My Drink Package? That song's in that whole song is basically a 5/4 polyrhythm, and you can dance to it. I when I first heard it, I was like, 5/4, nice. Fuck you guys, you know. Like, but yeah, it like those guys can do that, but like, back to the original point was like, when I started working with Maylong, I was really nervous that there was going to be a lot of 5-note stuff. Turns out I had just overthought it way too much. When I sat down with the band, they were like, do you know how to play a really good disco beat? And I was like, I really know how to play a good disco beat.
Hell yeah.
And
4 on the floor.
A lot of what it was 4 on the floor, and 4 on the floor with an offbeat 8th note hi-hat. Like, it was a lot of that. And then they would play over the top of it. And there was one time, Jigme, their lead singer, And it was the first time that I learned that, I don't know if you knew this, but Tibetans have, in their culture, there's like 3 or 4 first names. Everyone has like the same first name, but they all go by their middle name. So I remember one night we were after a show, they were all kind of fucking with me, and I was like, so what's your first name? And they're like, you don't know? And I'm like, what's the gag? And they're like, all of us, our name is Tenzing. And I was like, shut up. Each of them pulled their driver's license out, and all 5 of the other guys in the band, their first name is Tenzing. And it's on their driver's license. And they were like, but we all go by our middle name. So it was like Jigny, Tu, is that not Karan? But they all had these killer middle names, and like it took me forever to remember everyone's name because there was 6 people in the band. And a lot of the guys didn't speak English that well too. So it was like there was a language barrier, but the super cool thing about being in that band was that they wanted me to play the most solid 4/4 that I could for the songs, and they would take care of the polyrhythms.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it was and it was funny because a lot of times their singer would be like, "Don't listen to us."
That's hard, but okay. Was that the hardest part?
That honestly was the hardest part, was to not listen to them, like kind of separate myself and keep a tempo, and then be paying attention to, because there were certain parts where there would be a syncopated stop, or I would blow right through these pauses, these rests in the music, and there was a lot of times where he would I would always notice that anytime he was coming back and walking towards me, I was like, oh, we're gonna stop or do something here, and he would stomp his foot and kind of conduct things on stage, but it was a lot of times like he would forget about it too, and like he'd be in the middle of something playing. He played this really cool. It's a Tibetan style fiddle that you put on your knee, and it has almost like a soup can made of wood on the bottom of it, and it's covered with fish skin, and it has three strings, and you play it with almost like a slide, but it's made of bamboo.
There's fish skin on it?
Fish skin. Yeah.
Damn, that must have sounded wild.
It imagine a fiddle and a banjo mixed.
I gotta hear this.
Yeah,
I gotta look this up.
I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a Tibetan style fiddle, and it has a very specific name to it. And I feel bad because I absolutely loved that instrument, and I wanted to get one for a while. But then, like, I thought about it. I was like, I'm gonna buy one of these, and I'm gonna mess with it for a couple times, and then it's gonna end up sitting somewhere, and someone's gonna ask like, "Oh, what is that?" And then I'll tell them, and then that'll be the end of it. And I want to waste an instrument. Like, I have this philosophy of like, if I have instruments, they got to get used.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
You got to use them at least once, at least on one song, at least on one recording.
Yeah. And then and keep using them. Like, I'm going to use this again. If I'm not going to use it, I'm going to get it to someone who will, you know what I mean? Sure. But yeah, like that Tibetan rock band, Melong, MELONG.com. If you want to check them out, they're still around. They're a killer band. They do a lot of work. Melongband.com. If you check them out, they play a lot in New York City, and they play a lot in the Twin Cities, because those are the 2 cities that have the biggest Tibetan communities.
Sick. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out for sure.
Yeah, they're cool. They're a cool band.
Final question for you, if you want to take a second to think about it. That's totally fine. So, what was one of the darkest periods in your career, and what did you do to overcome it?
I've had a few dark spots, but the darkest of all of them was kind of honestly, it was kind of a mix of a couple of things. I used to play drums in ministry. Did that from 2017 to 2019. When I first got hired with the band, I was hoping to play with the band for a year, maybe 2. And I ended up getting to play for almost 3, which was awesome. But at the same time, when it came to an end, it was very bittersweet. But at the same time, like I was let go, which was a blow to my ego. I'm not gonna lie, and it kind of hurt. Like, and I felt like I was doing really well with the band, and I felt like we were meshing very well. But they're the kind of band that if you look up on like their Wikipedia page, they've got a ton of past members. So there's been a lot of people in the band, and that's kind of the hallmark of that band, is that it has been this revolving door of people that have come in and left, and they've left their mark, and they've either done this or contributed that and whatnot. And I'm super proud to be on that list of people that contributed to that band. I feel great about that, but at the same time, that hurt a lot. And then dealing with that, getting let go from that band, then it was 5 weeks later, the pandemic hit, and nothing was happening. So that was kind of and I know it was probably a very dark place for a lot of, I know it was a dark place for a lot of people, but for me, I had a lot of personal demons that I had to work out, and it would have been very helpful to be able to work it out with other people and other musicians and just get back out there to play and just kind of get back on that horse, which is one of the things you kind of have to do when you get let go from a band, especially if it's something that you were invested in and you really enjoy doing it. It's a blow to your ego. It's a blow to your emotions and everything, because like these are friends, and all of us are still friends. But at that time, that's like, man, like it's a breakup, So it hurts, and you kind of have to go through all the stages of grief, whether you like it or not. You have to go through that in order to come out the other side of it. But I think for me, it was the hardest part was like, is my career over? Am I done? Is music done? You know what I mean? Like there's no one's touring, nothing's happening. Like there was so much uncertainty at that time that I had a really hard time during that time, and it was fucking dark. I wasn't sure if I was going to play drums ever again. I was, and it wasn't so much that like personally I wasn't going to play drums again. Is there going to be anything to play drums for? Like especially at the early stages of the pandemic, they're talking about like, it's not going to kill you, but it could. And then the numbers are going up, and it was like the first stages of the pandemic were fucking scary, for everybody. And yeah, like that was one of the darkest parts for me. And to kind of piggyback on that one, another really dark spot was when I was stuck in a band and couldn't get out of it.
Uh-oh.
That was a tough one, because that dark period isn't the darkest period, but it was the toughest, because it was a band that I knew wasn't going anywhere. But yet we all went to high school together. We're fucking brothers, like we started the band got started in 1992 and played all of us graduated 1995, 1996 in that era. And the band started in 92, just playing talent shows and being the cool guys that we all went to high school with. I didn't actually play in that band at that time. I had two other bands, because I was one of three drummers that had a drum set in a school of there was 618 kids in my class alone. And in my friends' classes, in the graduating class in 1995, there was 700 kids in that class. And it was me and all 1,400 of these students, I was one of four people that had a fucking drum set.
Wow.
So every other musician out there was banging our doors down. And it was funny too, because like I wasn't a huge death metal fan until it was the only thing that anybody wanted to play was death metal.
Hell yeah.
And I'm glad, because I learned so much from that. But not to get too far off topic here, but like this band it started in high school. As soon as the band got out of high school and everybody was old enough to get like 18 years of age to get on to shows where they couldn't have a bunch of 16-year-olds, on stage. As soon as they were 18, all of us had the two black X's on our hands, and we were playing these shows. Well, then the band caught momentum, and the band realized that they absolutely hated the drummer in the band, which was one of a group of all of our friends. So this breakup happens between those guys. They throw him out. There's this huge fight. They hire me. I join the band, but then during the course of me being in that band, the band racked up $220,000 in debt.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, and it wasn't even your standard shit record contract. It was they found an investor.
Oh no.
I know, right? Everybody I've ever told this to says, "Oh no," which out there, don't fucking take money from investors. Just don't. But yeah, they had racked up $220,000 in debt, and I was not really on the hook for it, but I was on the hook for it because I'm in the band and blah blah blah. So like, we all knew, like, I knew the band wasn't going anywhere. Lead singer's fucking delusional. He thinks he's gonna be bigger than fucking Queen. You know. So
was this death? What was this death metal? What kind of
music?
This wasn't
death metal. Okay. This was more of a band that kind of. We had that sound that was right in between like the Seven Dust and Breaking Benjamin sound. We were in that neighborhood. More melodic vocals, actually 100% melodic vocals, no screaming, growling, or anything like that. But we had good momentum. We were actually, it was a radio conference that happens every year. I forget, it's not NACA because that's collegiate. This one is basically all the what are they called? The program directors for every radio station in an area will get together, and they will pick songs that have been released that they want to put in their playlist. It was between us and Breaking Benjamin. Breaking Benjamin's first big song, I can't remember the name of it, but we were in contention to make regular rotation. We were an unsigned independent act with a fuck ton of debt. And Breaking Benjamin was a band that had zero debt and a record label with distribution behind them. So I understand 100% why it is that they chose Breaking Benjamin.
Yeah.
But everyone liked our song better. So we ended up...
What was the name of the band?
The name of the band is Skywind.
Skywind. Okay.
Skywind. And it's one of the worst band names ever. People used to ask us how we would get how we got the band name, and I would lean in and say it's because we lost a bet. But yeah, everyone called us Skywind. And if you look at it written out, Skywind, spells fucking Skywind, right? Yeah. So we did everything to try to get people to pronounce it correctly, Skywind, which still makes no fucking sense. But like and our lead singer is that stubborn of a guy that he just wouldn't go with it. So I finally browbeat him enough to change the name to Skywynd.
Okay.
People still called it Skywind. So yeah, and when that was happening, I knew things were like getting stupid. Like they're just getting kind of ridiculous to where you're just beating a dead horse to try to get another mile out of it. We had an investor that was putting us out, that was working with our booking agent to try to get as much money out of us as possible because he was owed this money. And we were going out and we were playing 5 and 6 nights a week at little tiny bars with 3 people in it. But they were going to pay us $500 to come in and play here. So we would do this, and then we would get an opening act and we'd have to pay them. And it just became this losing business structure that would just kind of roll itself into next month. And we kept our investor happy because he was getting payments, but none of us were making any money on this. None of us had any time to work other jobs. So like I was stuck in this band and I did not know what to do.
So you were checked out.
Yeah, I was completely checked out, and I was just like, I started just getting a chip on my shoulder, and I just kind of started fucking hating things. And I look back on that as a great learning experience, but then again, at the same time, I look back on it and be like, what the fuck were you thinking? Why don't you just tell those guys to go fuck themselves and let them deal with it? Because, like, honestly, I had to do that ultimately at the end of it. Like, I don't talk to the lead singer anymore. Like, he and I probably can't even be in the same room together because of this. It's like, so like,
but you were young then. You were
I was
young.
in my 20s.
Yeah,
you know?
we all do stupid shit.
Oh,
when
absolutely.
We're young. We all are like, and then you know, hindsight is a motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Really.
So it's like, yeah, well,
it is.
It's part of the journey.
Yeah, but that was the darkest, not the darkest, but that was the most difficult situation I'd ever been in, and I really hope that no one else has to go through that, because I can say that, like, opportunity literally knocks once. Like, and I don't mean that like it knocks on the door. It comes up to your door and goes, and if you don't answer right away, it's fucking gone.
Yeah, it's true.
It's gone. So I feel like, looking back on that, there are so many opportunities that I could have jumped on, but my loyalty got in got in my way. My loyalty to my friends, my loyalty to, people that did not at all have the same feelings towards me as I did towards them. Like, I would have taken a bullet for these guys. Some of them I still will. And like, we had that type of core friendship before the band got in the way. And that was where I think a lot of the business and pleasure kind of got mixed together.
Yeah.
Like, business and pleasure are terrible, but that's the music industry. We get off on what we do and we try to monetize it, which is fucking difficult. And then also you mix in like lifelong friendships on top of that. It's just it can be a recipe for disaster, or it can be a recipe for some of the longest careers ever. You know what I mean? Like, what's that band? Silverchair.
I love Silverchair.
Who doesn't love Silverchair?
Fucking love them.
Those guys have been friends since fucking high school, and they still get along. But they were successful. They had the right people on their team, or they had the right idea on top of coming out of their head to do what they did, and they did it right. And they were lucky. They were very lucky. And like another band, Chevelle.
Love them too. Damn.
Yeah, Chevelle. There's two brothers in that band, and they're and it's like the two brothers and a cousin or a best friend, I think, is kind of the lineage of the band. Fucking great.
They're still kicking.
Still kicking ass. Yeah. Like those guys can go do a festival, and if they don't tour or do shit for 3 years, they can jump on any festival and they're going to end up with top billing.
Yeah. Because
it worked out, and they did it right. They had the right people and the right thing at the right fucking time.
Such a roll of the dice, though. I mean, we can only do that's what I try to like remind myself of every day, is because going into the music industry is such a I mean, it's before you even start, it's stacked against you.
Yeah.
Like it's just starting that way. So it's like it's a roll of the dice, but I think you can only control like how you show up and what you put out into the world, into the universe. So I've learned to like be less hard on myself, because there's only so much you can control, and this shit is like so up to chance. A lot of it is very up to chance. It's luck. It's but that doesn't mean to not do your best and try your best and to put everything into it, but you just have to accept that like it might not work out, but as long as you give it your all, then that's what should mean the most to you, is that you're giving it your all, you're enjoying the journey, you're playing music, and if great things happen, amazing. If they don't, well, you got to play music, and that's what you always wanted, and that's it, man.
You have to really give a fuck and not give a fuck at the same exact time, which is such a paradox.
It's so hard.
I think that's the nature of any facet of art.
Agreed.
Yeah. Any facet of art, you have to care to the
just
point
life.
of tears.
Just life, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to care. And then there's other, like, there was an old guy that I used to work with a long time ago at a fast food restaurant, which I won't name. And this is early 90s. He watched the manager. This old man was a drunken old man that came in every morning and made biscuits at Hardee's. You remember Hardee's?
Yeah.
I worked at Hardee's early 90s as a teenager, just trying to make money to buy weed and fucking drumsticks. And this old guy that worked in there, Jerry. His name was Jerry. He was an old drunken man. And he would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day and come into Hardee's and make biscuits for the whole day. It was all he did. I think he was like 66 at the time. He had just retired, but he was retired for a year and got bored. So he was like, I'll just make biscuits. That's what he wanted to do. And there was one time he watched the store manager just losing his shit about how it was something really stupid, like cups. There wasn't enough cups or this or that. And he leans over to me and goes, hey, don't sweat the petty shit. Pet the sweaty shit. And,
that's great.
I laughed. I was like, that's really funny. But then like years later, I thought about it. I was like, how right he was. Like, don't sweat petty stuff. Don't sweat it. But when it comes to it, when it comes right down to it, Pet the Sweaty. You know, like,
So good.
Yeah.
He sounds like quite the character.
Oh, he was. He really was. He had a flask that had his initials on it.
At work.
At work. Oh yeah.
Making biscuits.
He always had a cup of coffee, and I'd catch him every once in a while pouring what, I don't know if it was brandy or whiskey, whatever the was. I mean, he's from Minnesota, so I'm guessing it was brandy. That's like most of the old guys are into brandy back home, but yeah. He said that shit, and it really resonated with me, where it's like, just don't worry about it. If it, petty is dumb. You'll know when it's important.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, I'm sure you, like, touring and whatnot, a lot of petty shit ends up becoming really important to certain people. And when I say certain people, it's not a specific type. It's just like when you're on the road, there's always someone that you're touring with that's not 100% cut out for it.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? There's always one person that just they're uncomfortable the whole time, and they tend to start getting worried about things. Like I remember, of course, coming up, I got to share hotel rooms when you're on the road. And when I say share hotel rooms, it's fucking everybody in that room.
Yeah.
There's 2 beds, and there's enough for 4 people there, and you've got 9 people. So like, you end up with things like people getting pissed off about all the towels being gone right away, or like, why is there never soap in this room? And it's like, well, there's 9 of us, man. Yeah. Don't get so fucking angry about this. There's 9 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I learned after listening to that old guy when I was I think I was 15 years old. Don't sweat the petty. Really, like, words to live by, honestly.
So true, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this is certainly a wild fucking ride that we're on here. So, I mean, I'm glad we get to do it as musicians, because like, whether anybody's listening or not, we as musicians can say whatever we want. And yeah, we can say whatever we want, and and I say this kind of loaded, where like, we can say whatever we want about anything, but as musicians, I think all of us are much more prepared to deal with the consequences of whatever it is that we say. All
right, Derek. Well, before we wrap it up, where can everyone check you out on social media and get in touch with you?
Derek at DerekSAbrams.com. And it's very important that you put the S. It's DerekSAbrams.com. There is, I think he's a pastor in Tennessee that gets really pissed off when people are trying to get a hold of me. It's Derek at DerekSAbrams.com. You can also find me at Derek S. Abrams on Instagram, Derek S. Abrams on Facebook, and what other?
You on TikTok?
I am not on TikTok.
Oh, too bad.
The only reason I'm not on TikTok is because I tend to get like everybody else. Like, I'll get on TikTok and I won't accomplish a damn thing. I'll just end up laughing at videos for a half hour. So yeah. I tend to have better use of my time with Instagram, where it's half fart videos and half like messaging with people and getting things done.
Actually get some work done on there.
Yeah. We're like from there. If anybody really wants to get a hold of me via Instagram and send me a message. I will get that. Send me Facebook Messenger as well. I'll get those messages. Anything like that's totally easy. And I am a lot more active on Instagram, especially with messaging, just because that's the spot where most people have been, if they're wanting to work with me, we'll get a hold of each other through there. So.
Awesome, man. Well, hopefully this podcast will help summon your new guitarist. So let's put that energy out there into the universe for you.
And honestly, if you want to jam, hit me up. I fucking love to play drums to music. That's like my thing.
Perfect. Well, Derek, thank you so much for coming in and for sharing and for opening up. And it's been great to chat with you and get to know you a little bit more. And
this has been absolutely fantastic.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers.
Yes,
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.